What's good, YouTube? Alright, for the actual video, today's video, Thursday's video, for the actual video today, what I got for you guys is a guide on buying a car if you're trying to be rich. Now, this is something I wish I knew before I bought my Toyota Camry, although I feel I did a very good job buying my Toyota Camry, which I might make a video breaking that down. Let me know if you guys want to see a video breaking down my purchase, because I am trying to be rich and I purchased a car not too long ago at 19 years old. So let me know if you guys want to see that video. But without further ado, let's get straight into the spiciness. Now, like I said, this is for somebody that's really trying to be rich, you know, or it could be somebody that's just trying to make a very rational purchase, okay? Like, they just want to make a very good decision in their life and they're not trying to overspend, make a bad deal, etc. Get into debt, etc. So, number one, my best advice is to not buy a car at all. Just don't. Most of the time, people just want a car for the fun of it, and they're like, they want to be grown up, they're getting into their 20s, and they're like, yo, let me get a car because that's what everybody else is doing. But look, you do not have to do that. There is public transit. You could ride a bike. I rode a bike for a very long time saving up for my car. That was whenever I was in one city and I was only working in one city, and I would catch rides to my other job. There's also Uber, so like if you Uber throughout the month but you only need rides so many times, my friend does this. He only needs rides to the grocery store like once a week. That cost is less than the insurance on a car, the cost of the maintenance, and etc, etc. So he Ubers every single month instead of driving and instead of buying a whole car. So you just need to look at the numbers specifically to see if you really need a car, because the maintenance on a bike is extremely low and it gets you everywhere. You may not be the coolest kid, but like that's not the point. We're trying to grow our wealth and actually get rich. So there's some sacrifices you may not have to make. So again, wrap up, tip number one, just don't buy a car. Number two, now this may be something you guys have heard a lot, but it's something people do not follow, which I just seen a YouTuber, Sean the Hustler. I mean, it's great that you bought a new car, my man, but I don't know what you're, of course it depends on your goals and what you want at the time, you know, and you bought a good car. Toyota Camry is a very good car, but what I suggest is just don't buy new if you're trying to get rich, like on a very timely schedule. Just never, I don't think it's ever a necessity to buy new. Like, ever. There's no reason to ever really buy new. Like, whenever I go to buy my Porsche in the future, I'm probably not gonna buy it brand new because that just doesn't make sense to me. So, if your goal is to get rich, your goal is to get financially safe, to grow your wealth, I would just suggest never buy new and don't get fancy, because you just don't need it. You don't need all of that, because we have other goals, we have other priorities. A car right now for transportation is just, we don't need to get fancy here. So number two, don't buy new. Now number three, once you have declared you need a vehicle, you're not gonna buy new, you need to understand some other things. That is, understand a loan. Are you gonna need financing? Are you gonna save up for the whole price? What I did is I saved up for the whole thing. I think it was a very good deal, but here's why. Because once you take out a loan on a car, you don't really own the car. You have to pay interest on the car. It's gonna be in excess of the original purchase price, and there's just other things you need to take into account whenever you're purchasing the car, all the other expenses. So if you take out a loan, you need to realize that now you have to have full coverage on the car to protect the bank that's giving you the loan, because your car is the leverage and they don't want to, you know, it's just something that you have to do. Whenever you buy full, right now, I don't have full coverage on my car. I don't see a need. I save enough money on the side if something crazy would happen like that, where the accident would be my fault. Of course, I say that and an accident happened, but regardless, liability covers exactly what you would need. I was being kind of reckless that morning. I made a video on that. Check that out if you guys want to check that out. And it was my fault. But you need to realize you may not need full coverage on your car. It's a little excessive in my opinion. Now this is my opinion. I don't know what you guys think you would need, but realize if you take out a loan, you need to get full coverage, so it's an extra cost you need to think about because you're gonna have high insurance. So think if you're gonna need to take out a loan to finance it, or you're gonna pay in full, etc, etc. You need to look at all those numbers. So to wrap up number three, understand what it means if you're how you're going to finance the car. You need to understand all that and run the numbers on both sides, because it does determine the longevity of how much you're going to be paying every single month in terms of insurance, interest, etc, etc. Now on to number four. we have to deep dive into the other expenses that need to be taken into account whenever you're purchasing a car. So if you're somebody that has never had a car, you're looking into getting a car, there's a lot of expenses that go into having a car. You have gas mileage, you have maintenance, you have insurance, like I said in the previous number. So these are all things that I suggest you take into account. But on the other back half of this number 4 is I want you guys, whenever you're choosing a car, this is the best advice I can give you. Find a car with low gas mileage, because these are running expenses that you're always gonna have to pay for. Find a car with low maintenance. Now, what do I mean by low maintenance? This might be hard for you guys to understand, but a good reference is a car that you could YouTube the videos and you could find and do most of the work on it, as in changing oil, like I changed the alternator on my Camry because there was a video on YouTube about it and all I had to do was buy the part. This decreases your cost of maintenance by a lot, but that's because I have a simpler car than something fancy like a BMW Mercedes. Like, you never want to buy an old Mercedes because the maintenance on an old Mercedes, even if it works great when you purchase it, the maintenance is extremely high because parts and etc. are extremely high. You want to get an overly produced, very basic model car, and that's just something that I suggest because your running costs will be a lot lower. And you also want to look at the utility and the value that you'll get from using the car. Most of the time it's travel, but then you got to look at space, etc. like that, because that gives you value, that may save you time, and in essence it may save you money. So to wrap up number 4, you need to look at all your running expenses as in gas, insurance, maintenance, etc. So what I would suggest to you is, again, you should be able to do most of the maintenance on it. It should be extremely low maintenance. YouTube things like that and be able to do it yourself. Now number 5, something I suggest whenever you're actually choosing a car, once you've gotten past all these steps, that is to find a car that is ahead of its value. So for example, the Camry that I have is a 2007, but it only has about 35,000 miles on it. So how do you determine that it's ahead of value? Well, first of all, the mileage is extremely low, but here's a key formula that you guys can use whenever you're determining if this car is going to be ahead of value in terms of mileage, which is a very, very key aspect of choosing a car. So for example, I have a 2007, right now it's 2019. That is about 12 years, and then you want to multiply that by about 10 or 15K miles, which is the average driving miles a year. Of course, this might be different for wherever you live, but around here it's about 15K. So 15 times 12, so it's well over 100,000 miles is where my car should be on average this year. So now you know that your car is either below or above average, and this is how people are going to view it whenever you go to resell, which essentially is going to give you the stated value of the car whenever you want to have it. So your goal here should actually be to buy a car where your purchase price is going to remain the same because you bought it ahead of value. For example, I bought my car at $6,300. Right now I could sell it for $8,000. Of course, you need to calculate taxes and all that, which are some other things you need to pay attention to when purchasing a car. Is you got to pay taxes, tax, title, license, registration, etc., etc. You need to look at all those expenses that go into buying a car. But I bought it for $6,300. I could sell it for $8,000. And as long as I stay 15 to 20K miles a year, keeping on that average, I will constantly stay above the mile average. Keep it in good maintenance, keep it in good condition, and all that's going to keep the value of the car constant, and I should always be able to sell it ahead of the value that I purchased it. And on the back half of that, so miles and mechanics are your main focus. That should be your main focus. Cosmetics don't really matter, but I'm going to get into that in a second, where the correlation happens. So to wrap up number 5, try and purchase a car that's ahead of its value and use miles as a way to see if it's ahead of its value, along with making sure that it's mechanically sound, etc. So here's some bonus tips. Now, like I was saying in number 5, you don't really have to focus on the interior, the exterior, the paint job. You don't need to focus on any of that because that's not our goal. Our goal is to find a very mechanically sound car with low mileage, low maintenance, very overproduced car that's going to be cheap parts, etc. You can YouTube videos on it, etc. But one thing I want to give you advice whenever you're choosing cars is usually interior equals good maintenance. What is that? What do I mean by that? Somebody that's taking care of the interior of their car most likely is taking care of the exterior of their car in terms of the engine and etc. like that, constantly changing the oil, and that's some things that you really need to pay attention to whenever you're owning a car. Another bonus tip is, why are they selling? Make sure you always look at the person's incentives to where, are they more profit based? Are they just getting rid of it just because they don't need a car anymore? Those are good deals, etc., etc. So make sure you're always looking at why is the person selling. This is a great way to just feel safe and understand their incentives and where you might get screwed over in the whole deal. Another thing is, I found a kind of a loophole in the selling of cars, and that is in reconstructed cars. Now, nobody really wants them because the title is quote unquote not clean, but in terms of just getting a car that's worth what it's worth and it's gonna stay worth what it's worth from year to year to year and continuously get you from A to B, like my car, it was, the insurance company had told the previous owner that it was totaled. They took the car, then the previous owner took the check. They took the car, the insurance company let it off for auction. There's a used car dealership where I live that usually looks at those kind of cars and looks for the overproduced, very #1 purchase cars in the US, such as a Toyota Camry, and he buys them and then fixes them up. Ones that don't have any actual damage, as in frame damage, etc., etc. It was just bumper, and that was basically it. The bumper was crushed in, he pulls it out, reconstructs it, and that's where you can find some really good deals because of the price. There's no inflated price because of the way the title looks. And eventually you can get the title clear, so the value of the car will go up as you maintain it. So that's where you can find some really good deals. And to wrap up the video, I would just suggest, do not rush whenever you're buying a car. You know, you lived most of your life without using a car. You could always find a way to not have a car at that particular moment. So just don't rush. You want to do this well, because this is a long-term investment, as in 2 to maybe 5 years to maybe even 10. I hope my car lasts 10. Things like that. Now, to actually wrap up the video, some suggestions I give to you guys is, you need to look at the overproduced cars. For example, Honda Civics, their parts are going to be extremely cheap because they're overly produced. Not overly produced, but they're mass produced. Similar to the Toyota Camry, Toyota Corolla. You need to look at cars in this vicinity to help you buy a car that will help you save money while you're using the car, getting from point A to point B, and in the long term help you build wealth while owning the car and get rich, essentially. So I hope this video gave value to some of you guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Hopefully you guys, we hit 1K by the time this video goes out and you guys enter to win that giveaway, so watch the video about that. But if you guys have any questions, you need advice on anything, follow me on Instagram at Jonah Fury and talk to me. I'm here to help you guys. That's what I want to do. I want to give you guys value, etc. But as always, guys, keep grinding and keep growing.